Hello and welcome to the Baron's Game Room. I'm Aaron as always. I want to talk to you guys today about one of the most disappointing games I have in my collection, which was probably a big contributor for why nowadays I really have a chip on my shoulder about licensed games. And that game is, the Kingdom Hearts edition of Talisman. Now, I want to be clear that this game isn't solely the problem with it. Honestly, I think another big contributor was just the absolute drowning I feel like the market has been the past few years on Disney IP stuff. Disney, Marvel, Star Wars. They have just been going to town on the board game community, and I'm just kind of fed up with it. I feel like most of the time when I see a game like that, I'd rather it just be a new IP. And I think what really gets me even more than like original ones with an IP are the reskins, or taking away from one. I'm a big fan of Smash Up, and when they started making those Disney and other IP Smash Up things, I was like, you just ruined the whole point of Smash Up, which is the parody of actual IP stuff. And some of those new factions they made seemed really cool, and all I could think of is, wow, I'm never going to get that outside of a Disney expansion that I'm never going to buy. But that's a rant for another day. Let's go into this one. Now, I'll start this off by talking about the Talisman part of it a bit, because Talisman is a classic game that's been around for quite a long time, and this is simply a reskinning of that classic Talisman game. Now, Talisman, I won't go into all the how to play because it's quite a bit, and I want to rant a little more on this stuff. Talisman, I think, is a perfectly fine game, but it definitely is an older game that shows its age, and it has some of those older tabletop gaming sensibilities. It doesn't necessarily automatically make it a bad game, but for some people, some of those old game design things can be deal breakers, and I get it. The long short of Talisman is you are going to be going around this very large board, basically looking for power-ups and different items stuff you can use to mitigate the luck that is rolling a bunch of D6 dice and trying to complete various challenges or win fights as you go. And the game is kind of its own problem here, where you don't have a lot of control. Basically, you're going to roll a die, and then you're going to have two choices of basically going this direction until you move that number of spaces, or this direction until you move that number of spaces. So basically, every time you roll, you get two choices of where you land. The only way to beat the game is to make your way to the middle, which requires you landing on certain spaces or finding certain cards to move to the inner layer, and then again, finding a certain space again to move to this layer, where then you can sort of one-on-one move your way through till you get the middle. Now, to say something nice about Talisman, it is a relatively simple game as a whole to play, which means it can be good for families and all that. I could definitely see on the regular version of the game with the big fantasy appeal and all that, especially kind of a classic fantasy appeal, which would be very interesting to some players and all that. It's something that I think you could play with a younger kid that lets them feel like they're going on this huge, big, epic quest adventure situation without having to do a lot of, placing miniatures and building out a board in something like Hero Quest or something like that. It's a very simple, you just play it on a big board and just roll some dice and just move around. So I think it's a great kind of all ages thing. But again, for older players and all that, it's definitely got its downsides of you have to be okay with just that basic roll and move, of not getting a lot of choices about where you land. It's just got a lot of luck to it, which could be really annoying for some players. One thing that's really important in the game is when you're landing on spaces, a lot of them have this little symbol that tells you to draw a card. And it's a pretty hefty deck of cards. It's not small at all. I feel like it's somewhere around 100. I might be wrong. Don't hold me to that. It's a pretty big deck of cards. And some of those cards will have requirements to you finding other cards in that deck. And again, it's a pretty big deck. So there's a pretty good chance that when you find a certain card that's like, oh, hey, return it to this other character card that's in here, that you're never going to find that other card while you're playing the game. So for me personally, Talisman's kind of a middling thing. Talisman, I think it's okay. I think people who grew up with it are going to love it. I think some people who have kids might have fun with it. I do think there's better options, though, so I guess technically for me, Talisman's going to be a thumbs down, just because I think I would personally rather play something like Key to the Kingdom or Hero Quest, like I mentioned earlier. Those are sort of my preferences for playing some kind of fantasy-themed game I could play with younger kids. Although I know there's a ton of expansions, and maybe those make the game better. I don't know. Clearly not expansions for the Kingdom Hearts version, but for regular Talisman. So maybe those make it better. But now that I've talked about Talisman, I want to talk about the licensing, the IP of this one, of why I bought this. It was when I was walking around a Barnes & Noble and saw Kingdom Hearts. As a big fan, I was immediately intrigued and wanted to get it. And literally the second I opened the box, I was already disappointed. First off, one of the first things I found when I got this game was one of my freaking pieces broken. The game comes with miniatures for each of the characters you can play as in the game, and immediately noticed that I believe my Terra just didn't have a head. It was just loose in the bag. That sucked, so I had to drive back to Barnes & Noble, and they were letting me exchange it for another one. Thanks, guys, for that. I really appreciate it. Sort of, because then I got to play the game, and now we're here. But anyway, so yeah, characters. You get to play as some of your favorite characters from the Kingdom Hearts game. First off, this is a 2 to 6 player game, and there are 11 characters to decide, which tells me that there is not actually a hard limit on the amount of characters you could put into the game as selectable characters. Maybe it's 11 because the original Talisman game came with 11 choices. I don't know. I feel like this would have been a good time to maybe stretch that rule, though. If you're someone who's kept up with them like I have, you might know that there's these trios in the thing. Basically, you have a trio of characters that sort of go together. You've got the Destiny Islands trio, Sora, Riku, and Kairi. You've got the Disney Kingdom trio, Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. Everyone loves them. Of the Birth by Sleep trio, Aqua, Ventus, and Terra. There is one more trio from all of our heroes that we play as throughout the game. The Nobody trio. No, I'm not insulting them. It's the type of character they are. You gotta play the games. Alright. Which would be Xion, Axel, and Roxas. Two of those being very popular characters. You'll notice I didn't hold up any cards for that one. Is it because they're not here? Kind of. We have one of them. Xion. Just Xion. No Roxas, no Axel. Now, if you've been keeping track and counting, you know that I've only shown 10 characters, and I said there were 11. So who got the final slot in this 11 character thing? Well, it's only the Kingdom Hearts favorite that everybody loves, Mulan. Yeah, you know, from the Disney movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Mulan. It's one of my favorite Disney movies. Why is she here? You'll notice everyone else I've shown is an actual character from the Kingdom Hearts games, not from a Disney movie. Throughout the rest of the game, every character like this ends up like in that deck of cards I showed you earlier. Not as a playable character. And she's not even a major character in the actual game. I think out of the entire series of somewhere around 8 or so unique games, 8 or 9 unique games, not including like remakes or freaking like phone games and stuff like that. It's like 8 or 9 games at this point. You literally only even see Mulan in one, I'm pretty sure. As far as I can remember, in Kingdom Hearts 2, you go to her world twice, because you would go to every world twice in that game. And that's it. That's the only time you see and interact with Mulan in the entire series. And yet somehow she made it into this final lineup. Look, if for some weird reason you were just refusing to make it the proper 12 and also include Ventus and Axel in there, not Ventus, Roxas and Axel in there as well to complete the Nobody trio, then I would at least understand if you picked like 2 of them and left one of them out. But to leave out 2 of the most popular characters and put in Mulan? What? While we're on characters, hey, you get your character piece, your little miniature that I mentioned earlier to like move around the board. At least those might be cool. Well, some are okay. Some of these just have really weird like poses to them. Again, I already mentioned having the broken one, but some of these have these awkward poses. Like, I'm familiar with the pose they're trying to replicate from the game. That ain't it. Like, weird proportions on some of them. And I need to know what is up with this Sasquatch-looking freaking Sora. Now, I'm not saying I'm saying he looks like that pose of that blurry picture of Bigfoot we've all seen. Which is hilarious, because one thing he's kind of known about in the series is having big feet. Like they gave Riku over here. They gave him some pretty small, normal-looking feet, which just interesting choices. Just clearly not from anyone who actually cared about this game at all. So the character selection was a bit rough, and the miniatures were not super great, especially for something that's from a Games Workshop game. I know technically this one's by USAopoly. Games Workshop's name on it. Personally, I wouldn't want to have my name on that with miniatures looking like that, especially when I'm known for my miniatures, but hey, whatever. Let's go on. Some of you might be wondering, like, well, what game are they taking this from? Which one of the many games, or what kind of the story you're playing through in this one? That's kind of another drop. It seems to mostly be Kingdom Hearts 1, but the board just has random little bits and moments from other games. Not enough for you to say it's the whole thing. No, 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 no. It's pretty much almost entirely based on Kingdom Hearts 1, like 95%, with just a thing or two here and there being from like 2. And not for any good reason. Not like you wouldn't have other stuff to put there. Like, for example, main way for you to move from the outer circle to the middle circle is the Battle of 1000 Heartless, which is very specifically a huge moment in Kingdom Hearts 2. You also have things like the Disney Castle and a couple of its locations and all that, which were not playable in Kingdom Hearts 1, only in 2. Otherwise, it's all stuff that is either from 1 or from multi-games from there, so you have some argument. But yeah, I mean, like, once you the center, it's a lot of stuff from 1. That's clearly from 1, clearly from 1, clearly from 1, clearly the final boss of 1. Yeah, so much of it is Kingdom Hearts 1 based, and it just doesn't make sense. If you had all this extra space to put in some stuff from 2, then why have things like Courtyard and Library and not make them, their own separate areas? Why have so many things like Storm-Tossed Islands, Corridor of Darkness, all these gummy paths that do nothing that you could make places if you have access to more of the series than just 1? And if you don't have access to more of the series or just don't want to do more than 1, then why slip in weird stuff like this unnecessarily? And the kicker to finish it all off for me is they couldn't even properly skin it fully. This is a card called Accessory Shop, which mentions an item in here called the Element Ring, which does not exist in the game. It's probably something from the original Talisman, but it's not in this game. I could think of a couple, like, items it might be. Maybe it's meant to be a protect chain. Maybe it's meant to be, I think it's called a fire chain or something like that. I don't know. But Element Ring doesn't exist. Why? But anyway, that's my rant. I've been going on for forever now. For, like, the one person that also likes Kingdom Hearts and is still here watching at this point, hey, you're awesome. I need the watch time, seriously. I think most of my stuff averages out at less than a minute, which is crazy since how almost everything I post is like 10 minutes. Clearly people are not watching these all the way through. So hey, you're awesome, super appreciate it. I don't normally do this, but heck, why not? Anyone who's still here, tell me your least favorite licensed game, or a bad experience you have one, or hell, tell me I'm wrong, and tell me how much you love licensed game. Whatever, I'd love to have a conversation about it. Me personally, I'm sticking pretty much as far away from it as possible, except for a few situations here and there. Usually only unique games, no more reskins for me, that are related to IPs that I'm particularly fond of. There actually is another Kingdom Hearts game that's been out for a little bit that I've been kind of wanting to get. I'm sure I'll get it eventually, because I'm a big fan of the series, but I haven't brought myself to do it yet. We'll see. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening to me ramble for what's got to be forever now. See you next time.